Alright, on this next episode of Unpopular Opinions, we're going to be dealing with Hal Jordan's Green Lantern. Now, I've looked through some of these comments, and some of the comments are just about Green Lanterns in general. I am going to try and focus this more specifically on Hal Jordan, but we may get into some discussions of other lanterns or just the Lantern Corps as a whole. Everyone knows how this works by now, so let's get right into the first comment. This one is by Colin R., who says, "The Lanterns DCU show has potential to be one of the best superhero shows. It's smart having both Jon and Hal as the main characters because I think they work better as partners." I agree. I think that the Lanterns DCU show has the potential to be the best of the best. One thing I will say is apparently it's going to be centered around Earth, which is a little disappointing for me. I think it should be more galaxy-wide. It should be different solar systems, potentially even different planets. And on this channel, I repeat things in many videos over and over because I want to portray how strongly I feel about things. And this is something I feel strongly about. Jon and Hal having a buddy cop relationship. I think it is a genius move. We all understand that lanterns can operate on their own, but I think it would be best to really show how they can operate together, because at the end of the day, Jon and Hal don't just need to be core partners, or it doesn't just need to be Green Lantern business relationship. They can have a friendship as well, and I think having them together will really show that potential. Golden Lantern says, "Hal should always be a founding member of the Justice League. Personally, when I think of the Justice League, I have 6 to 7 founding members, and Hal is always there. I've never been a big fan of Jon in the animated series. Though he's watchable and likable, Kyle and Hal have always and will always be my Green Lanterns." Yeah, that's fair. Everyone has their own iteration of the Justice League. Some people like the New 52 Justice League. Some people like old school Golden Age Justice League. For me, personally, I'm a Jon Stewart guy. Always have been and probably always will be. Although, I do have to say, and if anyone's interested, you can watch these videos that I released a couple months ago at this point, where I rewatched the Justice League animated series. And something I said in one of the parts I made was that Jon Stewart can actually be kind of a jerk sometimes in that show. Not only is he just a jerk sometimes, but he can be far too judgmental and far too quick to judge in the first place. Realistically, looking back at that, if they choose to make Jon with that personality moving forward, I don't know how many people will actually connect to that character, but if they choose to make him a little more likable, the way I think Hal is very likable, they'll probably be okay sticking with him for a long time. Puggle Shroom Productions says, "Kyle Raynor is the best Green Lantern. Love it when such a great soldier like Hal can become evil." When I look at the Green Lanterns, I almost look at them like the Bat family with the Robins. For example, Hal Jordan is like the Dick Grayson Nightwing. Hal is the one that everyone will pretty much remember and generally always like. When I look at Kyle Raynor, to me, he's a really cool character, but he's like the Tim Drake of the Robins. For some reason, Tim Drake is easily forgotten about. Not many average viewers know who Tim Drake is, and a lot of the fan base just kind of shrugs Tim to the side. That's how I feel about Kyle, but Kyle has a lot to offer. And I will just say there are a lot of comments on this post that I probably won't dive too in depth with. A lot of people do feel that Hal and even sometimes Jon are too overly used, whereas people like Kyle are not being used nearly enough and aren't being handled well when being written. To every one of you who commented that, or at least feel or think that way, I absolutely agree with you. And as for your second point, I absolutely agree. I love the parallax Hal Jordan. I have a fascination with heroes turning evil because it shows how doing bad, literally turning to that dark side, is so easy because it's so easy to use your power for something that maybe you shouldn't. But I always love the story of getting out of that darkness. I love having these characters have to get out from that realm to just come back to the hero they were always meant to be. I'm not saying every character has to go through that, but then there are some characters I think are really cool when they do turn evil for a story. Hal is one of them. General AMC. Green Lantern should have easily been one of the most popular superheroes if they gave him a chance, and could have easily taken Wonder Woman's spot in the Trinity. Certainly bold. Definitely a bold one. I don't know if Green Lantern has ever been able to garner enough interest to be considered Wonder Woman level. Maybe you are right though, because the Green Lanterns have never been given the opportunity to show they can be that level. But I think Wonder Woman's historical influence on DC, female characters, and just comic book superheroes in general has catapulted her into a position with Batman and Superman. It would be hard to take her away. I think there could be another Trinity, of course, and I'm sure DC has done something like this before, but you could almost split the League in half. When the League isn't together, you have three: Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. And then on the other side, you could do the same thing. You could do a Trinity of Lantern, Flash, and Martian Manhunter, or Lantern, Flash, and Hawkman, Lantern, Flash, Green Arrow. They could create their own Trinity, which I actually think would be kind of cool. I will say, I do think the Green Lanterns, and even beyond that, the Lanterns in general, are probably the most unique thing about DC. If DC was handled properly and we actually had well thought out creative films featuring the Lanterns, and you were a fan of Star Trek or Star Wars or something sci-fi, but you were never into DC or comic books because they didn't offer that, I would literally direct them towards the Green Lanterns. The Green Lanterns and all of the cores are literally your sci-fi world of DC Comics universe. They are the Star Trek. They are the Star Wars. I even believe a couple years ago in 2016 or 17, they did a crossover between Star Trek and Green Lanterns. There's a lot to offer there when it comes to space travel, and they have it all. Happy Little Tree says, Hal Jordan is cool, but Jon Stewart is head and shoulders the best Green Lantern, not even close. Well, you're not going to get a disagreement from me. Jon Stewart is also my favorite Green Lantern. Jon has never gone bad the way Hal has many times before. He's spent his time as a yellow ring, a red ring, and even the most popularized Parallax. As a Green Lantern, it should literally be viewed as a sin to go evil. And for Jon Stewart, if he ever has gone bad, it has never been as bad or to the extent of what Hal Jordan has done. Because of that, I think deep down, the strongest willpower of the two would have to go to Jon. Mr. J says, Batman is more qualified to be a Green Lantern than Hal Jordan. I mean, yeah, I don't think I'll disagree with you on that one. I mean, I think there's a lot of people and a lot of these heroes who might actually be more qualified than Hal, who might have more willpower than Hal. Batman has been a Yellow Lantern before, but that's because he's embraced the fear. And maybe that's because Batman hasn't openly embraced his willpower. I mean, he uses his willpower every single day of his life to not kill his villains, to continue to do what he does for the people of Gotham and for his own loved ones every single day. I mean, his willpower is greatly apparent. So I do agree that Batman and maybe others would have been more qualified than Hal Jordan. There are two comments here that portray very similar things. I'll read the first one. Poke Zod says, Guy Gardner's the best Green Lantern in my opinion. Hal Jordan is pretty much the boring main character that after a new version is released, you can see how shallow his character is compared to the deep, interesting other variations. John, Guy, Kyle, Jessica, Simon. And then Black Crypto says, Hal Jordan can be a bit boring. I've read the new Guardians run on Kyle Raynor and ended up liking him more. Hal is written to be the greatest, but is actually one of the most boring ones between him, Kyle, and Stewart. That can happen sometimes when you create a world of characters that eventually will spawn more characters. For example, it all starts with Hal Jordan. But you know, as the story progresses, you will meet other characters who take on the role of the ring, and they have their own personalities, attributes, talents, all that type of stuff. Hal is like a catalyst. He is the opening for other human characters to become Green Lanterns in the future. And whereas Hal has that very important job of doing so, you eventually meet other human characters with the ring that you might be able to much more easily connect with. And especially too when you have a group of people that for some reason they only want to deal with one person out of that big group of people, it starts to get boring because you want to see what the other people have to offer over the one person that just constantly gets stories told about them. Spooky Keys. Look, no one else is gonna say it. Green Lantern 2011 was not bad. Ryan Reynolds was a great Hal and is better than a good chunk of Marvel movies in and outside of the MCU. Wow, that is massively bold. First, I will say what isn't bold is Ryan Reynolds as Hal or Green Lantern in general. I don't mind that at all. I think Ryan Reynolds was a good fit. I personally just think the movie is straight up bad. I mean, if people have valid reasons to like that movie, it is what it is. I'm not one to tell you you can't. To say it's better than a good chunk of Marvel movies in and out of the MCU, once again, if that's how you feel, I can't tell you otherwise. Looking at it though, I'm gonna have to just straight up disagree. That's bold. That's what this is though. It's bold takes. Guaco. The weakness to Yellow is actually cool and not as lame as people say it is. They should have kept it, but only for inanimate yellow objects. I've always found Green Lantern's weaknesses to be a little strange because I don't think they were ever written well. Like, for example, Alan Scott, the very first Green Lantern from the 60s, his fear was wood, and that was mainly because he always feared that his power would have absolutely no value on the substance of wood. The fact that he wouldn't be able to use his power on it, which just ended up being not true, and he got over it. Then, of course, their weakness to Yellow with the idea that the Guardians stored the parallax entity into the main Green Lantern battery on Oa. During their situation of doing that, it saved billions of lives, but it has now cursed a Green Lantern with a fear or a weakness to Yellow, which I mean doesn't really seem to be an issue anymore because they always seem to beat Sinestro or the Sinestro Corps, and even if there is issues fighting them, they still do it nonetheless. It's a very tricky situation on what would be a Green Lantern's weakness. To be honest with you, it would be hard, but I think the best type of weakness for a Green Lantern is just taking the ring off of their finger. Whether they have to chop their finger off, their hand off, their arm off, or do some sort of finesse the way Batman did to Lantern in Justice League War, where he slipped it off his finger, I think that is the best type of weakness they could have. Giving Yellow as a weakness, I think once again could be solid if they wrote it properly, but I don't think many people know how to write their weakness that well. All right, and now we're going to get into my bold opinion for Hal Jordan Green Lantern. Once again, I am very open-minded with comic book characters. I don't care what type of story you give me with these characters, as long as it's told well, I will accept it. It's the same way I can accept Batman being a killer from time to time and Superman being evil. I think the best story scenario for Hal Jordan, where he begins to where he ends, is an Anakin Skywalker situation. I think Hal Jordan needs to be looked at like the chosen one for the Green Lanterns. He is the man who has all the raw power. He's extremely talented. He grows his name to be the most, not just prestigious Green Lantern in the galaxy, but the most prestigious lantern in the galaxy. But a character like that always falls. Another situation you can look at it as is the popularized line from The Dark Knight. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And in this situation, I think the best outcome for Hal is to always turn into Parallax, always Order 66, the Green Lanterns, and other Lantern Corps out there, which in turn would rely on your next best Lantern, like Jon Stewart or some of the other characters, to take down Hal and kill him once and for all. I'm not talking about doing what DC does and comic book companies do all the time, where someone dies and a couple months later they end up coming back. No. Hal gets killed as Parallax. Hal would never come back. He would die that way. So that is my hot take. That is what I think Hal Jordan's story, more often than not, should actually go. I think in a way it can be written very poetically, but it can also open the door for so many other Lantern characters. But there you go, everyone. That is the hot take unpopular opinion video on Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern. So once again, thank you all for commenting on the post. If you want to see all of the other comments that weren't featured in the video, go to that post. It's still up. And if you didn't have the opportunity to leave a comment on that community post, or if you have another hot take you want to show off, post it in the comments below of this video. But that is all I have for you on this video, everyone. I'll see you guys on the next unpopular opinion video. And until next time, I'll talk to you all very soon.